You're at a crowded party. You spill a drink down your shirt, or you stumble over your words during a big presentation. Instantly, your stomach drops, your face flushes, and you are absolutely certain that all eyes are on you. Psychologists have names for this. The first is the spotlight effect, which is our tendency to overestimate how much people notice our appearance or our mistakes. The second is the illusion of transparency, the belief that the internal panic you feel is radiating outward, totally visible to everyone around you. This deep-seated cognitive bias drives severe social anxiety, quietly dictating how people dress, what they say, and how they navigate their entire lives. But there is a massive gap between what we feel and what is actually happening. The highly judgmental audience you're performing for, it's entirely in your head. Our brains are simply unreliable narrators of social evaluation. The reason we fall into this trap is neurologically hardwired. Deep within the right hemisphere of our brains, we process the world through a strictly first-person, egocentric baseline. We are the center of our own universe, and it is very difficult to view the world any other way. For our early human ancestors, this self-focus was a matter of life and death. In a small hunter-gatherer tribe, social rejection meant isolation and likely starvation. So we evolved to be hyper-vigilant to social threats to ensure we stayed in the group's good graces. In the modern world, however, this ancient survival mechanism misfires. It traps us in our own heads, forcing us to misinterpret completely neutral environments, like a quiet meeting room or a casual party, as highly critical arenas. To figure out exactly how bad we are at guessing what others notice, social psychologist Thomas Gilovich set up a series of experiments in the year 2000. In his first study, researchers asked university students to put on an embarrassing t-shirt, specifically one featuring a large portrait of lounge singer Barry Manilow, and walk into a room full of their peers. Students wearing the shirt guessed half the room noticed their embarrassing outfit. Reality told a different story. Barely 20% registered it. A follow-up tested the illusion of transparency. Subjects drinking a foul-tasting liquid were certain their disgust was obvious. Observers barely noticed. The empirical data is clear. Our perception ignores actual environmental feedback. It's a fabrication born of self-focus. Gilovich and his team traced this error to a specific mechanical breakdown in our cognition. They call it the anchoring and adjustment model. When guessing what someone else is thinking about you, you have to start somewhere. Your brain uses your high-intensity emotion as a baseline, an anchor. If you feel embarrassed, you assume everyone perceives that exact level of embarrassment. You try adjusting downward, but because your anchor is strong, your adjustment stops short. This creates a vicious cognitive loop. Feeling anxious, people assume it's completely visible, viewing themselves as a flawed social object. That panicked thought drives their internal dread even higher, essentially resetting their emotional anchor to an even worse, more extreme baseline. By obsessing over our own internal data, we commit what psychologists call empathy neglect. We completely ignore the reality that outside observers are usually quite forgiving, highly empathetic, and mostly unconcerned with our minor slip-ups. If the disease is being trapped in a first-person anchor, the cure is manually forcing your brain into a third-person perspective. Clinical therapists often use a strategy called video feedback to treat social anxiety. By recording a patient during a social task and having them watch the tape, the patient sees objective proof that their racing heart and internal dread simply don't show up on camera. It forces the brain to reset that emotional anchor based on reality. You can also achieve this shift through mindfulness and a technique called temporal distancing. When you feel that hot flush of embarrassment, you actively imagine the event from the perspective of an outsider in the room, or even from the viewpoint of a future you looking back years later. Studies show that engaging in this mental imagery for just 5 to 15 minutes drastically reduces the cognitive bias. These tools bridge the gap between your intense internal experience and the neutral, external reality. They dissolve the fake audience holding you captive. Even simpler is tackling the bias blind spot. Just knowing these cognitive glitches have names, the spotlight effect and the illusion of transparency, immediately diminishes their power over your behavior. Here is the great irony of any social environment. Everyone around you is also trapped in their own first-person anchor. They are entirely preoccupied with acting as the main character of their own movie. Because everyone is so hyper-focused on their own imaginary spotlight, they quite literally lack the cognitive bandwidth to notice yours. The realization that nobody cares grants you total psychological freedom. You are no longer under constant scrutiny. This knowledge provides the permission to live authentically, without fearing a judgment that was never there to begin with.